line, there's something in your life that you're not willing to sacrifice. Because our
Yeah.
spirits maybe we may come from an infinite spirit, but ultimately life is finite, and we only have room for so much. And people aren't willing to make room for what it is they need to heal, and they're not
Yeah.
willing to let go and not willing to
Yeah.
sacrifice. So maybe you can have all the bravery in the world, and you can have that want, but if you're not willing to let go of what
Yeah.
isn't serving you, you cannot make room for what will serve.
You have, and I have a statement on the outside of my door. It says, "It's not change that is painful, but rather our resistance to change." And it's a fact.
All right, all right, all right. I am so happy right now. I'm happy because Tom Roche is with us, and I've been wanting you to get on with us for a while. He's an actor, writer, teacher, director, you name
What's up?
it. Stand-up comedian. I met him through stand-up comedy, and I chose a topic today that's gonna kind of have some parallels, or at least some integration when it comes to the world of comedy, or I would assume so. So, Tom is a creative person. He's an introspective person. So that's the type of people I would like to have on. And you guys just met each other, even though you met years ago, and we discussed off
Yeah.
air. All right, so I'm gonna read something off, and then we'll take it from there. And
And
okay,
what happened to the what happened to the intro trailer music and all that, man?
don't worry about that. We'll figure that out later. Okay. The difference between being alone and being lonely is alone is just a fact that we can embrace and make decisions about. Loneliness, it's got a emotional charge to it that's very much a matter of perception. You can be alone and not be lonely, and you can be surrounded by all kinds of people and be completely lonely. So there comes, how open am I? How vulnerable am I really willing to be? What defenses have I erected around myself to protect myself that's keeping me from really connecting or contacting others? All right.
That's a long one.
Yeah. But it's something, because what I've figured out, at least in my short artistic life, is you need introspection. And with that, sometimes comes either, as it says, being alone or loneliness. So, how do you break out of it? Should we break out of it? Is it okay? Is it okay in moderation, just like anything else? Or is it a problem? Because there's a communal issue going on in the world, no matter where that is, but especially in the United States, because we're so individualized as a society that people forgot that we came from community. We came from unity, and now we're all alone. So when we're alone out there, get it on your own, do your thing. They mean that when they say that. And it's not necessarily healthy or conducive to long-term growth as a community, as a people, as like going forward. Because the more individualistic we get, the more isolated we get. And as we see today, look at all of the suicide rates in the developed countries around the world. And then if you look at impoverished, let's say global south, whatever terminology you want to use, countries, they still have that fundamental unity and community that's keeping them from doing that. But like everything, when there's a negative, there comes a positive. So through that negativity and individualistic society comes out that rose that grows from the concrete. So I'll start, I guess, with Tom. I just want to know, I guess, am I right by saying what I'm saying in terms of artistry?
So I do think that I'm going to use the words interchangeably, right? Because it's like we can talk about like loneliness as like isolation, right? And then there's like alone time, right? Like the solitude that you have to be introspective. And I think go there's an idea of balance in life, right? Where everything that's a medicine is a poison, right? And the only difference is moderation. So you could think of even like water, right? Like no water will kill you. You'll die, you'll be dehydrated. Too much water and you drown. But just we need the right amount of water. You can do that with every single element, right? We need fire, we need air, we need earth, we need water. Um, and even like toxins, like the poisonous toxin of like I'm sure certain snakes probably have some kind of medicinal value up to a point. And I
Mhm.
think solitude and loneliness are the same, where you need a certain amount of solitude in your life, and it's medicine and it's necessary. And everyone, depending on their upbringing, needs more. Some people need less. And the same with community. Community is also a medicine, but to a certain point, everyone has certain boundaries. So depending on your community and how you were raised, it's all very depending on the individual. So in general, that's where I would start, and I would look at something like this. Personally, as a person, um, I resonate a lot with the word loneliness. Like I love being alone. Like I love myself, and I think part of that is through like my relationship with God, and also some things I probably take for granted, like my family. Like I think I'm less lonely than I think I am sometimes, and because of the things we take for granted. Um, but at the same time, I think I can be more lonely than I think I am, and I think that's kind of where I'm in my life, like where I'm like, I've been focused on myself a lot these last couple of years, and I've started to realize like, oh, like I think I need more community and things like that. But those are my first thoughts when I hear the conversation. Definitely been something that's been on my mind as a person, so I was like, oh, it's very very relevant to like where my mind's been at lately.
Powerful.
Glenn?
I definitely can concur with everything you just said. But I always, when questions are put towards me, the first thing that comes to mind is the person who's asking the question. Um, what's their definition, of the question they're asking me? Because my perspective may not be what their perspective is. So if we're generalizing those two terms, loneliness and what was the other one?
Just being alone. Alone
Just
and
being
lonely.
alone, and loneliness and being alone, right? And like he said, like Tom said, everybody's autonomous in their conviction about those two things because of their developmental process of how they were associated to those two things. So we are programmed to a certain extent, right? Growing up. Loneliness and being alone as a child can take on a whole lot of different realities for each of us, because all three of us were brought up in different environmental, circumstances that loneliness might not have been a problem, but being alone, might have been a big problem. So that could, for that person who had to experience that as a child growing up, that could be traumatic. So his
Well, I
definition
think
and
I,
his
I think that's where what I read off said. It said it's really a matter of perception, because
yeah,
loneliness has, alone, less, negative. It has a negative connotation to it, and it's a matter of perception. So me saying
yeah,
I'm alone right now, that's a lot different from me saying I'm lonely. So when you say you're
yeah,
lonely,
and
that that
yeah.
that's negative.
Not really. That's my point. See, when I say well, I don't never say I'm lonely, because yeah, I don't use that because it's not true from my perspective. When you say you're lonely, what are you saying?
You're saying something negative. That's what I'm saying.
So okay. Now, if I
If
say
I'm alone, chilling, good.
so so are you so lonely to use a negative thing,
Yes,
but being alone is not a negative thing.
that's right.
So tell me why those two are different.
Because it's the connotation you put to the word. It's the emotional weight you have on the word. When I hear I'm lonely, And this could vary from person to person, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't, broadly speaking. When I hear I'm lonely, that is something that's negative. Loneliness, the state of being lonely, alone.
Right. You know, when I hear you say that, the first thing that came to mind is like, where did that come from in the originality of the definition for that term from antiquity to now? Why are we staying in a box of definition when you can actually define it in a specific way
that's the
for
same.
yourself?
We've discussed this before, and we don't need
Is
to get
the
into the
conversation
semantics.
about like the definition of loneliness versus lonely, or are we discussing like the positive and negative aspects of loneliness? Because those are two different conversations.
Exactly.
True. Well, another context with that is loneliness, as I see it, is isolation. And isolation can come out, and like I said, rose from the concrete, and it can also go places that I don't even need to say. So the idea is, where do we draw the line between the two distinctions? How
Well,
do we get out of the negative loneliness mindset rather than, staying in the loneliness mindset when really you're just alone and should enjoy your peace being alone, and it's you, God, you, yourself, however you may feel, and change the negative perception that you may feel with the term loneliness.
Well, it definitely, if for sure, I believe it varies person to person, and we can only speak our personal experience. So that being said, and even in a personal experience within myself, that can change within my lifetime. You know,
yeah,
when like what could have made me feel lonely yesterday might not make me feel alone today. You know,
right.
um, so I think a lot of that has to do with, I'm trying to think without being vague and just saying like mindset and perspective, like trying to pull from like specific moments in my life, like like I've definitely known what it's like to not be physically alone, but to be emotionally, mentally alone. Because then we also can talk about the realms, right? Like you can be physically surrounded by people, but feel mentally alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
can feel mentally, I agree with you on certain things, but emotionally we may still feel alone. And
Right.
I may be physically, mentally, and emotion. I don't know if this is possible, but I could be mentally, physically, emotionally like not feel alone, but spiritually feel alone. But I feel like if you feel lonely spiritually,
Yeah.
you know, like I think you'll see that in the other aspects of your life as well. I think spiritual is a lot. I don't know how I feel about that. I think everything's kind of, it depends what you have as your spirituality and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah. So those are just kind of my thoughts right now.
yeah,
It
but
really
that's what
it
I'm
really
saying. I'm
depends, and there's
saying
so many pillars.
that you're saying alone, and I said there's, being alone to me means nothing. It just means I'm alone right now. Hey, bro, I'm alone right now. Me saying, hey, dude, I'm lonely. That's when it's like, hold on a second, talk to me. What's going on? It
Yeah,
has
yeah,
an
yeah. But we
emotional
also we
charge.
also can agree that someone can have a positive connotation behind that. Like it's kind of like you ever been like I'm sad today, like I'm sad today, and that's beautiful. Like there's a beauty behind the sadness. You know what I mean?
Uh, Maybe not in those words, but yeah, I follow you.
But you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't word it the same. So I think in that same way, like and there's a little bit of a devil's advocate in me as a person. So I think I know what you mean when you say like loneliness versus alone, right? But the more we say it, the more I'm like, sometimes it is kind of nice to feel lonely. You know what I mean? I don't
And
know. I don't know if I even know what I mean,
no, you're
but I know there's
absolutely
a
right.
truth in there.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I was saying when it comes to trying to, what we see as a society, and all of us are victims to it, we have been given these terminology and definitions since we were born, and now we're stuck with that to define things. But now you're discovering in your own individual development, those definitions means nothing because when you're going through it, you're giving it new definitions. And it, just like you said, loneliness to me or isolation to me is a positive thing because I use it in a positive way. So it's not a
I mean,
negative thing.
yeah, but then I could use
For
that
me,
for all
for
the
me.
most derogatory words in the world, and we could play the game of semantics till I turn blue in the head and everybody
But you
dies.
could,
I could,
I think
but why would
that's the
you?
truth
Why
though.
would you? When you have objective definitions, why am I going to be like, well, maybe loneliness means something that it doesn't? Because if we look up
Be-
definitions right now, it's going to have a negative connotation. It's going to say a
But
distressing
that's the, I think
feeling, blah blah
I have a
blah.
belief. There's a
not
belief, right?
necessarily.
I have it written on my wall right here. It says
Yeah,
if I can break a definition, it can't be that thing. So there
exactly.
are words that have a positive and a negative connotation. So
Okay, so
Yeah,
let's.
loneliness
All
in
right, so
itself could be
okay,
positive or negative.
if we're gonna
yeah.
talk about
That's for
that, then let's
anything.
say then are we gonna really say that and be like, all right, so now we say nigga, and nigga all of a sudden means something positive, my nigga. Like the game could go on forever
It
and
does
ever.
though.
It
It does
does,
it
But it
but let's
does.
be
But it
honest.
does.
Is
But
that
it does.
productive? Is that productive?
Yeah,
it depends on what
Saying
you're
my
talking
nigga
about.
is productive.
yeah,
Ah,
yes.
all right, my nigga. Like, like I guess
I
we
mean,
can, but
he's
like,
right.
what's
Yeah,
the point? I understand taking the word nigga and
yeah,
making it a positive thing because that's a very specific word. But if we're playing the game with taking nigga, then we got to do that with every single word. Or when does it
exactly.
stop? So
I
you
think
want to
it
do it
depends
for
on the
every single
context.
word?
It's context though. I think that's what I'm saying is if
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about the word needs a context.
that's right.
Otherwise,
Okay.
it's meaningless. Everything is
Yeah,
meaningless without context.
that's right. Yeah, and that's why it doesn't matter. That's why I'm saying to you, from antiquity to now, we're just going on platforms that has already been built on definitions of things from a historical perspective. But do you have your own? Yes, you will cultivate it as you go. So, like for
Okay,
Tom, he can look
okay.
at
So
isolation as a positive thing because he loves isolate. I love being isolated because it allows me to
okay,
be introspectively and really sound in my vision
okay.
for tomorrow. You know.
Let's narrow the focus so we're not just playing a game about semantics and changing definitions. If we're talking about
But these are not
loneliness,
semantics.
it's 100%. If I look up the definition of
No.
loneliness right now, it's gonna have a negative connotation. But you're gonna say, yeah, but that's
Did
an
you,
individual
but you're but
definition.
hey, but you're proving my point. You're going over a definition that's been given to you to live by for the rest of your life from somebody who came up with that perspective and it stayed that way. It doesn't mean it's true. That's somebody's opinion.
So
The dictionary is
if I make a word, or if there is a word that has
yeah,
objective, root, suffix, prefix go together, now I'm saying, wait, that word doesn't mean what it means, even though the prefix, suffix, and root is still there, and it means just that. Is that
I
what you're
got two
saying?
words. I got two words for us. I got two words
yeah,
for us. So
yeah.
there's let's say we discuss loneliness, right? As what you're saying, Mo, loneliness, sadness because no one has friends or company, right? And then there's a word I believe it says isolophilia. We can use another word for this. That sounds like annoying to say, but a strong affection for or preference for
Yeah,
being alone and in solitude. So we're
right.
discussing that, right? The difference between sadness because of a lack of company and the difference between an affection for the lack of company, right? So we're discussing like without using the word, let's stick to the definition, right? So the definite what it means to to feel negatively because we lack company versus what it means to feel positively because we lack company. That's what the
Yeah.
discussion is, right?
But you're giving it context, so it changes with context.
Well, I mean,
Those words.
if you read the actual context of what I was trying to express or what I was saying, it was saying just the difference between alone and loneliness as an idea, as a concept. And then it goes on to say vulnerability or the lack thereof for me to be able to open up and contact people, the inability. So, with that context in its entirety, I would assume that your non-willingness or inability to open up to somebody, it's something negative or explicitly negative. Maybe not. Maybe you might say, hey, well, I mean, if you don't want to you can go on and on like that. But when you're talking about that, is being vulnerable conducive to healthy relationships? I would say yes. You can maybe disagree. Is being vulnerable productive to have a society and become a man or just a stronger person overall? I would say yes. You can say no. But in that context, I believe that I expressed enough to say, hey, okay, we're talking about loneliness as a negative concept rather than just being like, hey, but the word loneliness means something different from person to person. We could go there if you really want to, but if I'm talking about the inability to be vulnerable, like I said, then I think that's negative. Why can't I be vulnerable? Why can't I reach out to somebody even though it's just one phone call away? Why can't I FaceTime my mom? Why can't I FaceTime my dad? Why can't I say, hey, what's up? What's up, Titi? Like, I miss you. Why can't I do that? I can't open up. But I'm lonely and I'm the one to blame for my loneliness. And
Okay,
then
so
you could say, oh, well, no, I'm just alone. No, I'm lonely. There's a difference
but
There
that's
are
in
people.
that
There are
case.
people though who. There are people. There is a difference between the people who, who within themselves there's internal and external obstacles to loneliness, right? There is someone who might say, I have people I can reach out to, and I have a society and a community in which I can be vulnerable to, but for some reasons I'm not able to choose that within myself. But then there are people who are in societies where they could actually be hurt from being vulnerable. And there are people who are in families that it's not that why can't I reach out to my auntie, but it's just like, yo, if I'm vulnerable with my auntie, that might hurt me more. You know what I mean? Like if I open up to my homies are actually toxic, and I actually need to change my entire environment. So in that way, that might be an example of the people who are surrounded but feel lonely because even if they reach out, that it's like they're just, you know what I mean? They're just setting themselves on fire versus the people who should be reaching out because they're cold and they want that warmth, but maybe they don't feel worthy of it for some reason, or because they've been in those toxic environments and they're so used to like reaching out and being hurt that now that they've moved on from that environment, they're still in survival mode and they haven't yet they haven't upgraded the software to be like, oh, it's time for me to move on and reach out. So that's one of my thoughts is in regards to like um the the privilege of vulnerability is as much as a responsibility as it can be a privilege.
yeah, and listen to of course, when I'm listening to people, man, we're looking at a whole historical reference of that person's life, why they're coming to their present perspective. So that's why that type of question, looking for a definitive answer that would be generalized throughout society, is impossible, right?
There is no definitive, but okay, is being
Right.
vulnerable good or bad?
But
It's
again,
a, is it like I would go back
No,
to even
no,
what I
no,
just
no,
said.
no. I'm saying
It
now
depends.
I'm talking. I'll give you more specific, more
Okay.
specificity. Boom. In a reciprocal relationship with somebody you're sharing a bed with,
okay. And the
is
I,
question,
again,
vulnerability
again,
something that
again,
you would
if
assume,
I'm sharing a bed with
broadly
someone,
speaking,
when you
is
say, what do
okay?
you mean by reciprocal? Because what if I'm sharing a bed with someone abusive, and my job isn't to be vulnerable with that person, but to find help outside of that? You know, like maybe I need to be vulnerable with someone. I think vulnerability. I'll say this: vulnerability is important, but who you're vulnerable with is what's important. So vulnerability is a necessity in life, a million
Well,
percent.
but
We have to be vulnerable with ourselves. We have to be vulnerable with
I
ourselves
mean,
first.
like you give, I give. We love, I love, we
Got it.
love,
So
you love. Healthy.
inherently like healthy reciprocity.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Then yeah, if you're in a healthy relationship and the reciprocity is healthy, then a million percent vulnerability is necessary without a doubt.
and if you think about what you just describing with two people coming to synchronize with each other and believing and wanting the same thing, right? They both have to be on that same belief system, because if they're not, you're going to have opposition. So if you're saying in the context of being with somebody, just like I was telling the client earlier, they both have to be on that same perspective of like one was having expectations of the other. The other one did not even have a clue of what they were expected to be fulfilling. Then when it wasn't done, the other one had premeditated resentment because the other person who did not know what the heck they wanted to be fulfilled now was doing something wrong that they didn't even know was even wrong because there was nothing that they should even be aware of because nothing was said. So in a relationship, just like mine, we both have to have the same definition or aspiration or conviction about anything, because if we're not, then we're in opposition already. So if you're saying loneliness within a relationship, a love relationship, if I say I'm lonely, but I'm with my wife, then why am I defining my loneliness where she's the one who's responsible for making me not lonely?
Repeat that, because I think I
If
lost
I
you on
say
that
I'm lonely, I'm in a
one. Yeah.
relationship, like you said, in the context you was talking about, in a relationship with somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
A marriage relationship, right? Or whatever, locked in. And I say I'm lonely, but I'm in this relationship. Who do you think I'm saying is causing me to be lonely?
I mean, yourself.
But normally we don't say that. We mean the other person is the one that's causing me to feel the way I am.
Yeah, but you're the one who's responsible because you're the only one who could, like as I said in the beginning, perceive that you're lonely.
But we
I
don't,
can be lonely and be with
yeah,
somebody, but I'm the one who's putting that term on myself.
right. But do you see that in relationships though, as a manifestation? What you just mentioned?
In what
Ownership?
way? Oh, ownership?
Ownership.
No, you're never
You
gonna
don't
see
see
that.
that. You see
No.
blame. You see blame. You see expectations. You don't see ownership. You don't see us walking around. I know I'm lonely, but that's on me. It's not my girl. You know, I got taken my. You don't see nobody doing. No, we're looking for
And
somebody to do something to make me feel better.
would you say in that context, it's the inability to be vulnerable with your partner enough to tell them, hey, I expect this, this, and that from you, or I would like for you to meet me halfway in this regard? Because
Second,
Yeah,
that's what I
I
think.
think that's the second problem. But I think most people haven't even not most. I can not gonna say most people, but I think there are many people who haven't even gotten the chance to be that vulnerable with themselves. That most people haven't been able to even humble themselves to even admit that
yeah,
like, oh, this is my responsibility. So even if it's like I do need to talk to my partner about the ways in which I feel lonely, I still haven't even been vulnerable enough with myself to be responsible for my own wounds in the
yeah,
ways that I can even because again I think there are so many times when like yeah um maybe you need to communicate something with your partner that hasn't been communicated, but even if you do communicate that thing, how much of that loneliness is just stuff within yourself that you haven't worked out, stuff that you're putting on your partner which is not your partner's responsibility, because it really isn't your partner's responsibility to bring you joy, to bring you happiness. You're just supposed to kind of grow together as people, and then hopefully you get along with enough sort of things that you're moving in the same direction, right? But you want to be
Yeah,
growing,
right.
and what makes the relationship work, right, is you're growing in the same direction. Because we can both be growing and we can both be healthy, but if we're growing in opposite directions,
Mm.
ultimately, like it doesn't matter how. I mean, like I can be open and vulnerable, but maybe the solution might not be
But
like maybe the solution might just be that I feel lonely because I'm in a relationship with someone who you're a good person and I'm a good person, but we're just not moving in the same direction. And if we're truly gonna grow towards the light that we're growing towards, we're gonna have to separate. So I
but
think, yeah, you
aside
have to be
from that,
vulnerable, but with yourself first.
I agree. But like, okay, so let's go down, to the root. Like Glenn would say, the belief systems. Like I
mm,
said in the beginning, what what defenses have I erected around myself for that that stopped me from really reaching out to people, from really contacting people? What have I done? Because it's all you. Why have I created these defenses? Tommy, you could say, like you were saying before, you could be in a place where uh, vulnerability is vilified in so many different type of ways, so you kept in. Now we're living in, I guess, an intellectual society, So what defense systems have I created, and how do I tear them down, and should I tear them down? The answer for me is obvious. Yeah, I'm knocking down them walls because I know how it feels to live behind these walls, and it ain't fun. And then I know the other side because I've experienced it, I've lived it, I'm doing it right now, where I'm open, I'm vulnerable, all you can think of. And I don't mean vulnerable in like a I'm soft type of way. I mean, I'll say anything, and if you're gonna say something to me, then hey, I don't care, because you can't control me. Only I control me. I control my mind. I control where I'm going. I control, how I act, and I don't care.
Well, and that's why, and I'm a shameless plug. That's why I wrote this book, so that you guys can understand where we all are before we could be free from that incarcerated mind. That's why I'm saying the historical life that we are adapted to. Now, as adults, we're starting to switch from adaptation to cultivation, right? We're creating now. So all that adaptation from your childhood to where you became aware as an adult thinker, which won't happen really until around 28, 29, 30 anyway. Now we are starting to define our future present perspective about ourselves and about the world around us too. So there's a lot of trauma and historical drama and negativism from that subjective mind growing up. Now we're more objectively aware. So you got to change your whole belief system to a lot of things. Even the question you're asking today, what does loneliness mean to an adult, is not the same as a child. But if we have been spawned in a very degraded environment as a child with a lot of hardship and pain and suffering, and you don't have any sense of intimacy that was coming your way, your definition of loneliness will be totally different than another child who did not have that type of degradational environment. So he's going to look at loneliness totally different than one who has been traumatized by that type of state of mind too. So as an adult, now we get to create. So now your definition is experiential wisdom is going to define your definition of loneliness or anything. Because now as an adult, you put in objective facts and truth to your understanding rather than feelings, which a child can only do. It's impulsive, it's reactive, it's subjective. So that's a huge trip. So that's from emancipation from incarceration to emancipation. That's the journey I'm taking people on. Seeing what you already were because of your developmental process, and now you get to be freeing yourself from yourself as an adult thinker. That's emancipation. So what it means today, as Tom said, what I think of what that means today may be totally different what I perceive it to be in 10 years from now based on my journey into life. So does the word, does it really have a definitive definition? No, it does not. It's a program that we've gained at a certain point in our lives, and now we're creating our own new program for what we're defining too.
The way I look at it and the way I give pushback is because we can do this forever and forever and ever and ever and ever. We could talk about the meanings of different words and put our own definitions on it. But what I say is, if a word has a negative, connotation to it, I am just not gonna use that word and use a different word that aligns better with what I'm trying to express for myself. Like that goofy word Tom said that nobody knows what it means. That actually meant something though. And it meant exactly what we're talking about. Loneliness means something different. I would say I'm alone and I'm chilling. I'm happy. I'm good with being alone because I don't see that as a negative. If I say, hey, I'm lonely, and yeah, I could switch it up and be like, hey, Tom, I'm lonely and I'm happy like this. Yeah, that's fine too. If you want to go like that individually, but when I'm speaking on a societal level, I'm speaking about the whole framework of loneliness. And
I've
this
got
topic
I've
is
got
much more
two
than lonely.
two
No,
two
go ahead.
things to add on to that. So just I got a response to what we're talking about in terms of like definitions, but also in terms of kind of to combine like your thoughts of like what are the boundaries that keep us from being vulnerable and that keep us alone, but that also relates to how we're using words. So things like like there's the word I said, I think it was isophilia or whatever, that has I think like one definition. But lonely itself does have multiple, like lonely has a neutral definition, just means being without company. That has no positive or negative connotation. But it
Question.
also does have sad from being alone. So even lonely within itself has no fixed positive or negative in the way something like isophilia does. That being said, the way that we give words definitions themselves can be what makes us more alone. So you can have two people, right? And let's say two people start off and they both associate being lonely with sadness, right? Let's just say two people. Person A says, I'm lonely, and they mean that I'm sad. And then person B says, I'm lonely, and that means that I'm sad. And now let's say we teach person B to start seeing loneliness as a positive thing. We have stupid little monkey brains, right? I'm gonna just start there. I'm a strong believer that we have very simple monkey brains. So if you can train person B to start seeing loneliness as a positive thing, that will actually start to break down their walls and their boundaries. And I think that happened, like words are cups, right? And we fill those words with definitions. And sometimes we freeze those definitions and we're like, this word means this one thing, and in the dictionary it means this one thing. And some words have one definition and some words have multiple. But ultimately, like, like as opposed to like this like tennis ball in here, right? This tennis ball is fixed no matter what. This tennis ball is going to be a tennis ball. But words are like malleable. They as much as they exist, they don't exist. It's like I can change. I can take a word. I can hold it captive, and by changing its definition and its perspective, that itself could be a key or the key in me being more vulnerable. So I just want
Combine the idea of like, yeah, we're discussing semantics and definition, but it's not about semantics and definition, but it can be. I can take a word with the definition, and by changing the definition for itself, like try. Like for example, for some people, the word try means to make an attempt,
Yo,
which
Tom,
has
Tom, I think you're something
uh,
went off on your side.
it just. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You just sound a little
Can
echo
you
in the
guys are
background.
you guys doubled? Can you guys is how's your audio? Can you guys hear yourselves?
That's good.
Yeah,
You're good.
Yeah, we're good.
yeah, I
Okay,
hear
yeah.
you
So
now.
my headphone just died.
But
Um,
you're making a great point in the sense of, you know, every time I do research and study and I go back in language such as Greek, right? Definitions within terminology that's been translated or transfigurated from a dialect of, let's say, you know, ancient Greek language. A lot of the works like dynamite, what we use now, the word dynamite in the Greek, it comes from a root word that's Greek that didn't associate that meaning then with how we use it now. So, like you said, words generationally throughout time have always been just so meaningless because it depends on the present day you live in, how you're going to define that specific word, because that's what we have as a construct of an order, right? Socialization, we have to be in some system so that we all can
So what you
associate together,
suggest
just
is
in the
whenever
relationship.
I don't agree with the definition of a word, I should just say, "Hey, let me change the definition so it fits what I like better."
That's not now. That doesn't make
Then
sense to say that. No,
exactly, but that's what
what
I'm
I said.
saying. That's why I'm saying we could go
Well, hold
word for
on,
word
but
and keep going this game.
nah, you just missed what I just say, Mo. If you are living in a construct of a social construct, then that will determine the definition of that word at that time for those people who are under that umbrella structure of defining life through those terms. Like right now, certain words in our era means totally different than maybe 60 years ago. The same word will not be used in the same way like we're using it now as a social construct of norms, right? Because we're all having to, like group norms. When I do groups, we have to have a group norms. Why? Because everybody in there has to follow the same rules. But if I go to another country, like where you are now, you're in Kenya, the same words that we would use here in the United States to define relationships will be totally differently expressed or experienced over there. And my wife is from Kenya. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the collaboration and having to come and mix two different cultures and having now to make words synchronized to where it fits our social norm, which is our family, which is me and her. Where if I was living on her coast, it would be meaning something totally different. If she was down with me in Trinidad, it would be meaning something totally different. But where we are here in America, we now have to synchronize it to fit what the natural, terminology or meaning is right here, and how does it express itself. You understand what I'm saying? So it depends on where you are and what foundation are you living by that describes that word for the people that is in that realm, if that makes sense. So loneliness here, how we all think about loneliness, look at how complex it is already.
I mean,
so content really, really, really matters to the 10th degree for a word to really have meaning for the people who are saying, this is where we're coming from with this understanding of this word for our world, for our life right now. So it's just a broad brush you might try to stroke to get one definition or some practical application for anything in society.
I'm gonna
talk about
put it
global society.
Look. Huh? I'm a skim through it. I don't even want to do this, but I'm gonna skim through it. I'm gonna skim through it.
You're not getting the answer you want.
No, it's not that. I can look up the definition of loneliness, but I don't even want to play that game.
But that's what I'm saying, Mo. That's what I'm saying.
Listen.
Let me ask you this. Hold up. Let me ask you this.
Go
Who the heck wrote the dictionary?
Man. Are we gonna get a game and I gotta put my kufi on and then I gotta become a black Israelite like real fast and say the white devil this and that?
I'm making a simple point.
You playing the wrong game.
Your point. I'm literally proving your point. I'm literally trying to prove you your point, what you just said. That's what I'm trying to do. Who wrote the dictionary?
You want me to put my kufi on?
I'm just saying, when you use definitive terms like this is what it means.
Listen, context. You discussed context, right? That's exactly what I was getting to. Listen, you could be surrounded by all kinds of people and be completely lonely. So there comes the time. How open am I? Think of the negative. How vulnerable am I willing to be? Think of the negative. What defenses have I erected around myself to protect myself that's really keeping me from contacting people? All of those in the full totality of the whole thing that I read had a negative connotation on it. All of it. But automatically when I started speaking, it was like, but it has so many different, we're talking about the topic at hand, and the topic at hand, everything around it's negative, then chances are we're talking about a negative connotation. So the word itself can vary in definition, let's say. But if the context is negative, then it's negative. So if I'm isolated in my room, lonely, crying, whatever, but the house is filled with people, and I say I'm lonely, I'm experiencing loneliness right now, then I don't want somebody to come up to me and be like, hey, but what do you mean by loneliness? Do you think that you're just saying the wrong word and you're not saying loneliness in a positive way? I would slap that person for even saying that to me. What's wrong with you? The whole thing is bad. I'm not gonna look at a little, I don't even want to get into what I was gonna say, but you just got to look at the whole bigger picture and not say, hey, but the word. But 90% of it was talk about protecting myself. Protecting myself from who? Building up walls from who? Surrounding myself around people that make me feel lonely and vacant. Like, that's the context of the whole situation. It's not about, me being like, hey,
So,
but you should be saying this and that. And like, come on, man.
So like, if let's say I'm let's say it's not a conversation that we're having right now, right? And let's say like pulling from my own experience being alone, or just thinking like in the situation where you gave me, right, where a friend reaches out and it's like, hey, I'm lonely. I think in situations like that, like say I'm the one listening to the lonely person, then all you can kind of do is like listen and like be there for that person, you know. And I think that's where vulnerability comes in, where sometimes we're lonely because we wanna I think there's this idea as humans where we want to be witnessed. And part of what being human and what being alive is being seen by other people, being heard by other people. You know what I mean? Like, one of the worst forms of torture is just isolation, right? Just put someone in a box. You don't even have to touch them. You don't have to physically assault them. You just make them alone. And by being
Wait. But
surrounded
hold
by
hold
walls.
on a second, Tom. Tom.
Yeah.
What do you mean by isolation? How do you define isolation? Do you define it as something negative, or do you
Being kind
define something positive?
Are you being sick?
Nah, I'm being
being,
facetious
Your
right now, but
screen
I'm
is
saying
lagging, so I
we
don't
can
know if
go
you're being
about that in
facetious or
every
you're
time.
asking me genuinely. Huh?
Now I'm being facetious right now. I'm not asking you
Okay.
generally. Like that's
Your screen was
like that's
lagging,
what
so
I'm
I
trying
couldn't
to
see it.
say.
Like right
Trying
now.
to say earlier, I could say isolation in a negative context, and you'd be
you
like, "Damn!"
stuck.
But I can also be like, isolation is where my biggest ideas come from, and then that makes it a positive. But if I'm saying surrounded by
Yeah.
negative people, protecting, building walls, then I'm saying in that context, obviously we're talking about negative. So I don't need somebody or anybody to come up to me and say, hey, but by the way, what do you mean about negative? What? I just finished telling you something negative, so obviously it's negative. So we can keep going through
I,
that
I,
game.
are you okay with understanding that your perception is only yours?
So building walls is positive.
You ain't answering my question.
I don't, because it's redundant. Like I don't need
How
to.
is that how
Okay,
is that a redundant statement? Is your
okay,
perception
my
only
bad,
yours?
my bad. I misspoke. It's like you already know the answer, so why would I say it?
Well, the reason why I'm asking the question is to prove what you're saying is an autonomous thing. And if you're saying everybody should know this, everybody should feel this, everybody should be like this, because this is how I see it, and this is my understanding of it, I don't see the problem. How come we all just can't see this is supposed to just be negative? Well, you're talking about how you're perceiving the whole concept of your conversation. And you're saying everybody should be seeing it the same way I am. Like, if I
But
say I'm
you're
lonely,
shifting the
everybody's
goalpost.
supposed to understand what that means. Everybody won't understand why you say you're lonely. So nobody else but you is claiming to have that conviction about what you're using that word to express.
I see what you're saying, but
Even
what
though
I'm
I said all
saying
that
is
other stuff, just throw it
if
away.
someone is in a position where their isolation is killing them, right? Like if I'm isolated and my isolation is not benefiting me, what are the things that I'm doing? What are the boundaries that I've put up, which is causing that reality to do harm to me, regardless of the words that I used to describe it?
It's
Yeah,
still autonomous.
yeah. So
What you just said. What you just said is exactly what I just stated in a different way. It's still that person's perspective and cultivating and manifesting that specific term that he's using to do what he's doing to himself. You even just use the idea that what other people make me feel like. Nobody makes nobody feel like nothing. You're gonna blame people for how you feel about a situation for yourself, and you blame it on people. But we say things and don't even realize what we're saying. You just mentioned how they make me feel. Can somebody make you feel any way that you're feeling?
yeah, but how do you define blame?
Huh?
How
Well,
do you define blame?
by putting ownership on someone else when it's supposed to be yours. That's how I define blame. Now you have
So
another
say
definition?
someone's
Is
isolated
that
themselves, right?
objective?
Huh?
Is that objective or subjective?
What is which to the
Blame.
question? Is it
Blame.
objective or sub? It's very
Is it
objective.
objective or
It's very
objective?
objective.
But
Yeah, because we have facts.
who made the word blame? Oxford Dictionary. Where's Oxford? Oxford, England. The white man made it.
You got to go
That's
further
what
back
I'm
than that,
saying.
bro.
That's what I'm saying.
You
We
got
can
to go
keep
further
going and
back than
going.
Webster. But that's my point. So you're going to have to live in your now and how you are using terminology within the settings of what we are all cultivatingly, socially, constructively using to go and use that word for.
I have a question. I have a
In this
question.
group, you
If
know?
someone is isolated and they've taken responsibility, like I feel alone and this is my fault and it's no one else's fault. What are some examples? Like obviously there's a million. Millions of examples. So it can be any example. So after someone has made the step in taking responsibility and accountability for their own loneliness, what are some examples of the walls they've probably put up that they now have to take down? So it's like, all right, I'm alone because of myself. What's the next step? What do I do now?
Is that a question?
Yeah. What are some in your experience, right? Where people have taken accountability for their own loneliness. What is usually the next step after? I understand why. I understand that I'm alone and it's my own fault. Now, in many contexts, there are many reasons.
Right.
Do you find that there are after the person has taken responsibility? Do you find there's like common reasons why people would be in that situation?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, all three of us can speak to that because we've all been on a journey of life, right? And you're seeing the conclusions you have based on experiential wisdom from the things you did or did not do. So you come into that conclusion, right? For yourself. So if you're saying your loneliness now, you assess yourself, you're introspective, and you're realizing the things that you have done, which caused everyone that you used to know to vacate because of your personality behaviors. And you're recognizing that, you know what? These are the things, the reason why I'm in this situation where I'm at right now. So I'm taking responsibility. I'm humbling myself to accept the fact that the things I have done put me in this situation to where I don't have people that I would say I used to have around because of my dealings, right? So it's a personal indictment. So if you're saying the other side of that is, okay, now I know what I have done to create this, then at least I know I have an antidotal perspective to do the opposite. But that's got to be experienced to find out if that's going to even be better.
And in your experience, Glenn, do you find that most people, when you deal with loneliness, do you find that when most people confront that, like when they get to the point where they're like, all right, I'm lonely and I have the power to change this, do you find that most people are lonely because that they've become someone or they are someone that pushes others away and that isolates them, or do you find that they themselves do you find that they are a person that repels people, or that they tend to be actually surrounded by people and taking people for granted and they don't have the courage to reach out? Or do you think that there's no like common like it's like 50-50? Like, do you think in your experience in modern times, does it depend on the age? Is there a common problem that you see rising a lot? Like what are the trends that you're kind of seeing in the present day, like America, with the people that you're dealing with?
Yeah, I would say everybody who comes to me is programmed already, and they don't know it. We all are programmed to certain behavioral norms and patterns every day. You may not even realize that you are until we bring this to a conversation, but we're all programmed to a certain level. So if you're saying to that point, as far as is this person recognizing now that they're repellent, they're not a magnet? They know the history of that association with that person or people that they were associated with and the things that they had done to create the environment to where they became toxic and the people didn't want to be around them anymore. There's objective facts that person could assess. It's not his personality, it's his manifestation of his behavior. So sometimes people, and that's why in the book I said, don't let your practice be your personality, because it's two different things. We may behave in ways that we didn't premeditatedly think that it was going to have dire consequences, but is that our personality, the behavior, or is it, something different than who I truly am?
In your experience, when you work with people, do you find that most people are lonely because they've like they're not taking advantage of the people they're not making the effort to reach out, or do you find that most people are lonely because they are the kind of like they've burned too many bridges? Like typically, when you find people who are lonely, like do you find a common answer, or is it so individual that you're like everyone's journey is so individual I couldn't even tell you that it's most likely to be this? Or could you say like usually there's like a most likely solution, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, there's multifaceted reasons for everybody's loneliness perspective, if you want to use that word, whether you want to use it positive or negative. It doesn't even matter. Like we say, words means nothing but to the individual who's going to use it. So, and yeah, Mo, you can shake your head all you want, but your words and my words will never mean the same thing all the time. Never.
Yeah.
And is it wrong? No, it's not wrong.
Remember that next time I call somebody a cunt, I'll be like, no, but it means something else for me.
Yeah, like, and the consequences we got to deal with. So the reality is, whatever you're going to believe and use that belief to manifest, you will have to deal with the consequences, whether positive or negative. And I guarantee you, it'll cause you to make some changes when you find out the way you're using it and the manifestation that you presented, how it reciprocated it was from another person or not. It gives you a whole new way of living. Like your question, if that person that you're saying, if they have come to me and they said, I'm lonely, it's so many different reasons I find out why that person is using that terminology to express.
Do you find that there's a most common manifestation of loneliness, like in your experience? Like, what is the most common way that people speak their loneliness into existence?
Yeah, there is no common. There can't be any common, because your life is autonomous. Mo's life is autonomous. Mine is too. And we can all have experiences that put us in a low lull within our expectations and the lack of fulfillment. That puts you into a lull of emotional despair, right? Because you wanted something, you didn't get it. Just like a child. What does the child does when they don't get what they want? What do? They act out, right? They'll cry out because they're not getting what they want. Remember when you were a child? When mother didn't give you something, did you have a tantrum? Yes, you did. What do you think a grown person is going to have if he has a program of having tantrums? He's going to act like a child when he doesn't get what he wants. He's 35 years old, 40 years old. His girl or somebody didn't give him what he wants. What do you see that individual will do? Because it's a habit of a program. He will act out and he will not care about the consequences because he's going to get what he wants.
I have a question. All still do What's the difference between a child who, is there any reason, like you have a child who doesn't get what they want and they throw a tantrum, right? And they are outward. Then you have a child who might not get what they want and they withdraw. Yeah. And they isolate. Yeah. And they become, you know what I mean? Like, what is the difference between those two mindsets? And why would a child throw a tantrum versus why would they withdraw? And why would an adult throw a tantrum and like, versus like withdrawing?
Yeah, and that could, again, it's autonomous to that child, because we don't know if that child is a single child, never had other siblings or nothing, and he's an introvert because of the lifestyle he grew up in, and his loneliness is so empowering to defeat him because he doesn't have no outlet. But if you're in a family like mine was, which everybody, you were just like one. You didn't even exist because there's so many, nobody really give a damn, in a sense, when you have a tantrum or whatever, right? So it's different for everybody. No one, there can't be a general answer for any of these questions we're asking. Even if we want to use a word loneliness, and we want to synchronize it to mean what somebody here wants it to mean, then fine, I can go along with that because it's feasible. It's and I'm not saying, Mo, anything you're saying
you're
is
saying
wrong.
don't use any words no more that, possibly could be shifted into anything other than what it is. So there's no such thing as objectivity. I'm just going to say words like sad, but sad could be dependent on the person. Because sadness could mean happiness.
Well, and that's why I'm saying words really, if we go all the way back in time, words is only meaning what we want it to mean.
And how is that productive for a conversation to me coming up to you and saying, "Hey, I'm sad," but what do you mean by sad? It's like it's unnecessary for us to have that type of dialogue when we're discussing, issues that could be detrimental to society or at least be something bad. But then I don't need you to say, "Hey, but what do you mean by bad?" Because the thing is, we could go on forever. And I looked up the definition. Loneliness, sadness because one has no friends or company. That's the example. Okay, you can say the same way nigga might be in the dictionary and means something completely different. We could go down that route, but it's unnecessary. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about healthy people. We're talking about diving in. We just had a good 15-minute conversation talking about the negative context of loneliness, and it took us all that time just to get there. When we know, if we're talking psychology, it's loneliness. Like you said, it's autonomous to that person. I know exactly what you mean, because when you study individuals psychologically speaking, there is no explanation. It's a person-to-person basis. You can have one person extroverted, one person introverted. There's no explanation on why. They can have all the nurture there. They can have the same nature, and there's still going to be no explanation behind that type of stuff.
Well, that's not true. There's an explanation to that autonomous person, because when somebody comes to me and they say, "I'm sad," now I have to do a diagnostical evaluation to find out exactly what is in their world that they have prescribed that word to. And most of the time, it's not that they're sad. It's like somebody say, "I feel like." Is that a feeling or a thought? When most people say, "I feel like," is it a thought they're actually going to express or a feeling? It's a thought. So I always stop people and say, you know that's not a feeling. That's a thought. And then, well, yeah, that's what I meant. So we have habits of behavioral in our and how we speak, how we believe. It is so programmed that unless you dissect those programs, you really wouldn't get to that person's true clarity of really what they want to express, because they're only speaking of how they have been programmed to speak. So when you hear people say, I feel like today is going to be a great day," is that a feeling or a statement?
It's a statement, and
it's a
they
thought.
said a feeling attached to it, so I guess
it's a thought, right?
Yeah.
So if I say, "I feel glad today," is that a feeling of gladness, or is it a thought?
Because I can,
they both can align to one another.
I can think I feel glad today and not feel glad today, and I can feel glad today and not even think that I feel glad today. So
the manifestation is expressing a conviction. So your conviction is going to be tied to a manifestation one way or the other, whether positive.
Sometimes, but you can also be a divided person, right? Like I can feel sad and say I feel happy, right? And some people are not in alignment.
Yeah, we do every day in the U.S. Hey, how are you? Good. $3.99. Like that's the context of the situation. But that person say they're good. They're just saying it because they just rolling with the punches. They just doing what they're supposed to do as society, social norm.
So do you see that there's a program that we have to accept and deal with, which most people don't even want to accept that concept, that they're literally living on a program of beliefs. Until that is changed, you will see the same manifestations all the time. It doesn't mean that person really understand it. They're just programmed.
I think this kind of loops nicely into like loneliness, or I think one of the boundaries and one of the things about loneliness is people aren't even conscious of themselves enough to understand the root of their loneliness.
I
Where
like
we
that.
might want to
I
say,
like that.
I'm
Exactly.
lonely because of the walls and the boundaries I have.
Yeah.
You might actually not even be conscious, and you might actually be like so unconscious that those walls and boundaries don't actually exist and you're making them up, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think that's kind of one thing where some people are so detached from the reality of things and
Yeah.
on autopilot, right? Like I'm good when I'm not, or even I'm I'm so used to being sad that I think I'm sad and I'm not even sad, and you haven't even
Mm.
opened your eyes to the reality of the
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
situation.
And you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely right. You have, and that's why we, in the clinical realm, we would say the subconscious doesn't create anything. It just repeats what's already been created.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people are dysfunctionally functioning on. It's a hamster wheel syndrome of belief systems. And until you step off that hamster wheel, that will not change your manifestation. So you're absolutely right. You're saying words, but they don't really mean they sad with that word. They're sad in the subconscious realm
Mm.
of discontent for a whole lot of things that it culminates to be sad from that
The,
person's clarity of what sad means. Like more, if you say you want to be negative, then yeah, all that person's perceptional view of their life is a sad commentary for them. They're not happy. It's not a consistent
I,
habit to
I'm gonna
even
say
be
something.
joyful,
I'm
you
gonna
know?
say something, but that depends. I don't know if you had to go or your client didn't show up.
Yeah, no, I got a couple minutes short. I would have been gone already. So
I know.
keep
Just
going.
making sure you didn't lose track of time. No, but
Yeah, I'm looking at mine. I got 12.
okay, all right. Now,
That's why I text them.
I get what you're saying, but a wise man by the name of Glenroy Bristol once told me that words mean things, and if you're telling yourself negative words, you will start to act it out in your emotions or in your actions. So
Yeah,
you can change the
yeah.
root cause of certain words, but at the end of the day, I feel like if I'm sad, I'm sad. I'm lonely, I'm lonely. I will not use those words to define what I am or how I feel. I will use
Mm,
other words that actually have some type of weight that would make me push forward. If I say certain words, that's the power of manifestation. The power you go towards it, it goes towards you. That's a prayer. Every time I say, I hope, things go well. That's a prayer. I'm saying it. I'm saying it to the big man upstairs and I'm saying it to myself, and it will
mm,
result in my actions like the subconscious. If I consciously say these positive words, then subconsciously I will start to act out positivity just because.
yeah.
And that's the shift of the
But it
program,
has to be
because you're the one
repetitious.
who said the same way somebody could be sad all the time on that hamster wheel is the same way somebody could be happy all the time on that same exact hamster wheel. So it depends who's on the wheel and which direction are you going. You're going nowhere. But I'd rather be
Well,
going nowhere
listen,
happily.
I'm glad you just said that going nowhere because anybody who is on a hamster wheel is exactly that, going nowhere fast. I'm not on a hamster wheel. I'm consistently headed in a direction. So not everybody's on a hamster wheel. That's stuck. Matter of fact, we say that's consistently a stupid person because it's not ignorance when you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's why we say it's a hamster wheel, you
Yeah.
know? But when you get an epiphany and you know you did something wrong, you don't step off of that behavior, then you literally saying you want to experience that same habitual negative experience over and over again. And we see that's what people do in relationships all the time. Why are they constantly fighting and fussing and feuding with each other, but they say they love each other?
Mm.
And they see the manifestation of their discontent about each other is not manifesting what their definition of love is. So why do they keep doing it?
Mm.
Isn't that like a program of somebody who have no clue that they can change until they find that they can?
Mm.
So
Okay.
it's a program. All
Okay.
these definitely,
Let me zoom out for a second. We're zooming out
yeah,
now, taking it out the household and talking about just the objectivity, the physical presence of just actually being alone, not talking to people, lonely.
yeah.
How does that fit into a societal type of way? Because I do think there's an epidemic, and I won't call it a pandemic because it's not everywhere, but an epidemic of loneliness, especially in countries like the United States, Canada, et cetera, where there's not really the sense of community the way, I would see here in Kenya, for example, where everybody kind of talks to everybody, it's love everywhere you go. I could take a knife and go like this and then look at the knife and it's going to say love on it. That's how it is over here. But what's affecting people psychologically speaking is the manifestation of the thought of that I'm lonely, I'm lonely, I'm lonely. Yeah, but what are you actually tangibly and physically and objectively doing to remove yourself from that vibe? I never experienced that type of loneliness. I've only experienced internal loneliness where I have people around me, but I'm not lonely. But then there's other people who have nobody around them and they feel lonely, and rightly so, because they have nobody around them, but they won't reach out because they built up too many walls. Because my grandma did me 30, my grandfather did me 30, my uncle did me 30, blah blah blah, so on, so on, and so on. So what do those people need to break out of that wall? I'm trying my hardest, and I was speaking further. I'm trying my hardest to break out of that shell, and I just
They,
can't. What do you
they
do?
need therapy. They need therapy. I'm going to say that because that's an opportunity for somebody who, is going to be able to help that person to look deeper within themselves for the resolution that they really are. You're the antidote as well as the problem. All of us are. We're all dysfunctionally functioning because of what we have established as a belief system or manifestation of that system. So no one can come and rescue another person, but we can guide a person to see themselves and then have them make the decisions to want to change because they see they want something different because of what they experience they don't like. So that's what I would say for anyone, anywhere I go. I'm always trying to bring people to an observation of themselves, because when they take a good introspection, they have to decide because of what they had experienced. I don't want to feel like that anymore. And in order for me not to feel like that anymore, I cannot do what I saw I did in order for me to experience that feeling. Well, even if it's in a relationship, like say you and your wife, and you realize like one time you said something and it didn't go off well, and she had an attitude about it, and then you didn't get none that night. She was all pissed off, and you like, I can't be messing around like that because I know I need my stuff every day. So you'll change, right? You'll change your belief about that certain way that you was presenting to her because you saw the manifestation. So who is responsible for the change?
Yeah.
It would be you, right? So we are our own worst enemy, but we should cultivate ourselves as our best friend. So if I'm going to help anybody, I have to bring them to that self-awareness that they are being the most destructive person to themselves, but they need to be the most productive person for themselves. So it's really introspectively seeing the person from within that is causing that which we say we don't like, which is being manifested.
And I
So that
think in regards to this idea of like this loneliness epidemic in America, and it gets thrown around a lot. I think if I was gonna like simplify it, right, I think people you need faith and to face your fears, because I think a lot of people are just simply, I think at the root of this epidemic is like a fear of love and an unwillingness to face that fear, to have a faith to face that fear. Because if you don't have faith, whatever you want to call it, faith or hope, confidence. Speaking of words, confidence. And I think it comes from Latin. The con means with, and the fidence means faith. All confidence means is with faith. So if you don't have faith, if you don't have a vision of what you want, first of all, how are you going to move towards that thing? So first, people need to know what they're looking for. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you going to find it? And you also have to be brave enough to risk. And I think maybe, I don't know if some people think they have more to lose than they do, because it's like if you feel like you have nothing to lose, then go for it. Otherwise, like, what is this like? I'll call it like a false god that you're holding on to. And I think a lot of people are lonely because they're holding on to something that maybe they think is of worth, or that they identify that is not fulfilling them. You know what I mean? It's like you're holding on to like hot coals, and it's just like, dude, you have to let whatever you're. Some people are just holding on to things that they have to let go of, so that they can reach and strive towards something that they need to heal. And some people simply they don't have that voice or someone to reach out to. And some people do have those people reach out to, and they're simply not listening. There's only
Yeah.
so much that you can do for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, exactly what you just said. If a person is so indoctrinated in their developmental lifestyle to a certain point, now they're in their adulthood, but they didn't change any of those programming in that developmental phase of loneliness or negativism in their life, because it was just predominantly negative in their worldview or how they perceived everything. And that person don't start changing any of those belief systems, they will consistently metastasize that same belief system to become even more destructive to themselves or anybody else who come into their life, until they have an epiphany that I need to really get rid of this behavior. But like you said, they have to sometimes be fostered into seeing it, because they can't see it. Most people who's programmed don't know that they're on that hamster wheel. To them, it's right. Do you know everything that you say you believe is right? Until somebody have to check you and say, look at it this way. And then you're like, oh, yeah. But when you said it, it was right. Nobody ever says anything thinking they're wrong with a conviction.
I think one of the keys that Tom said was bravery, or I think maybe even another word to say, just willingness to be able to try.
Yeah, you have to want it.
Attempt to do something, because a lot of people want it, but they have an incoherence with their thoughts and then their actions. Like, I want to reach out to somebody. I've thought about that before. Like, damn, like I want to reach out, but I just don't. And I don't know if brave is the right word to use, but like, I just can't do it. Yeah. Why can't I do it? What do I do now? Who do I talk to aside from a therapist? I seen a therapist. My therapist sucks. Like, that's the story, as you know, Glenn. Like, a lot of people just, rolling with the punches. A lot of people just swimming with the ocean, and the ocean's carrying them, not the other way around.
But most of those people,
you sacrifice. I think that if you're like, what do I, you know what I mean? I know it and I'm misaligned. There's something in your life that you're not willing to sacrifice, because our spirits we may come from an infinite spirit, but ultimately life is finite and we only have room for so much. And people aren't willing to make room for what it is they need to heal, and they're not willing to let go and not willing to sacrifice. So maybe you can have all the bravery in the world, and you can have that want, but if you're not willing to let go of what isn't serving you, you cannot make room for what will serve you.
You have, and I have a statement on the outside of my door. It says, "It's not change that is painful, but rather our resistance to change." And it's a fact. We don't like change. And even because we know it takes work, it will take consistency. It will call for discipline. Change calls for discipline. And humanity is the most undisciplined species on the planet because we have cognitive ability to create. So we're constantly not liking, what we like, we like. What we don't like, we don't like. Even if what we don't like is beneficial for us. Now, you can have, like right now, you think about, for instance, if I was to diagnose one of you and give you the terminal bipolar and say, you bipolar. And matter of fact, in order to fix that, here's some pills. You see people running around taking medication for terminologies that was created and gave to them as a problem. But yet the life that they really was living has nothing to do with that term. It has to deal with reality that they did not know how to handle in many ways. So there's reality to their life condition, and they didn't need a pill to fix that. Maybe if they needed to come down to suppress their emotions to get them on a balance and then deal with life on life terms. But I'd rather have that person initiate the condition of his cultured mind based on the situation that caused his behavior, to then deal with that, rather than label him, name it, blame it, and tame it with psychotropic medication. I'm not holistically looking at that person's dilemma. He has a life that's full with complexities from his perspective, and I need to tap into that, get to know his world of why he's so abusive to himself, rather than put him in a, just because you're having these manifestations, oh, you're this, and matter of fact, take these pills for the rest of your life. What am I fixing? I'm treating, I'm not fixing. So that's why I tell people I deal with cause. I don't deal with causes. I deal with, I don't deal with symptoms, rather. I deal with causes, because underneath that symptom, there's cause, there's a belief. So we deal with manifestations all the time in our medical condition field, right? You in what you call your title out there on the road in the ambulance system, as a, what you normally used to do in Mo when you
Well,
was out there with the
EMT.
ambulance, EMT, right? When you go out there and you're dealing with the reality of trauma in people's lives and accidents and everything, what are you dealing with? The internal or or what you're dealing with on the outside of that person? Are you dealing with the person, or are you dealing with really the manifestation of what you got to deal with to save that person's life or anything?
I mean, I could give pushback on this one because there's signs and there's symptoms. Signs something you could visually see, and a symptom
Right.
something you got to diagnose. You got to ask questions. You got to inquire about a little bit. So you're dealing with signs and symptoms.
Yeah, exactly what you say. You got to inquire. You got to investigate. You got to go deep, because the symptoms may have a whole lot of reasons why that symptom is showing up. It just can't be a disease. So if we're labeling people with disease, but we don't know the cultivation of those symptoms based on the life they had to live, and now they're manifesting a whole lot of anxiety, right? But the anxiety is not because of any situation. It could be because nutritionally they have no magnesium in their system. And we don't check that first. We just look at the manifestation of the anxiety and panic attacks, and now we want to just suppress it with psychotropic medication. Did we help that person deal with the reality of what's constantly in his program? No.
Well, so that's the difference, and I think me and you have spoken it before. The difference between Western and Eastern medicine. Eastern is more individualized because it came in large part from focusing on the individual person when he went to go see the village doctor.
Yeah.
And then in the Western society, the numbers became so so much that you had to find a broad umbrella way of looking at things. So then people essentially became numbers rather than actual human beings. You have to look at the signs and symptoms.
That's part of why people are so lonely here as well.
Yeah,
that's because everything's, you're trying to solve everything. You want to think like a scalpel, right? And you want to give everyone like their individual time and attention. Or everyone should be taught. There should be a culture that at least teaches people to do that, and at least what's the word? Just a system in which things aren't so broad and so generalized, right? And I think that's part of why people are so needy too.
But there's a new terminology for intervention now in the medical industry. It's called functional medicine rather than conventional medicine. Functional medicine is dealing with the whole person, like you said, the holistic evaluation of a person on the inside to see why these symptoms are being on the outside. It's like they use the illustration of a tree. When you see a yellow leaf on a tree, you just don't pull the leaves off and stuff. No, it's something with the root, because there's a nutritional deficiency that's causing that the tree is sending out alarms, really, about something that we can't see. And it's the same thing with humanity. We have a lot of alarms in people's behavior emotionally and expressively, but there are much more internal, foundation of dysfunction that is creating those manifestations. And it's not only psychologically, it could be medically at the same time. So everybody who come to me, I ask them all the time, have you done a full physical before coming? Because we want to eliminate the medical possibilities of some deficiency that they may never even know they have. Like folks may have thyroidism, right? And they're all over the place in their mood and everything. And they could be misdiagnosed with bipolar and be given Seroquel and 300 milligrams of all kinds of things, Clonopins, and next thing you know, they're on 3 or 4 or 5 different psychotropic medication, but nobody really took care of their medical condition that was causing the manifestational symptoms. So there's a lot of medical deficiencies that causes psychological symptoms just the same. So, and we don't even talk like that.
So yes, that makes a lot of sense and 100% true. But when it comes
Yeah.
to biology, I think that's a little bit different, especially when it comes to neurochemistry that may have came from, let's say, generations or even a generation of just some trauma, because they did,
Yeah.
the study's been done, and I don't even,
Yeah.
I'm not even a big advocate of all these studies, because I think they do it to fit their narrative. But we can know even on
Exactly.
a common sense level that of course we're adopting some trauma from people we never met, people we don't even know, great
Yeah.
grandparents, great whatever. So when I
Yeah.
biologically or mentally feel some type of way, sometimes it's not my own doing, and it's not 100% my fault. Can I do things to
Mm.
make it better? Yes, but I don't think there's a blanket like you say that you could just put over and be like, hey, all you gotta do is drink some more water and you be alright.
Yeah.
Rub some Vicks
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, and matter of fact, remember they used to say, and I'm gonna jump off of here after that. They used to say, it's genetics, it's genetics, it's genetics, right? That's been in for generations. That's all we've been here. It's genetics. That's why things are happening. Now they have a new terminology, which is it's epigenetics. Look it
Yep.
up, EPI
Yeah, I know.
genetics.
I studied
Totally
it.
different definition, right? That's why I say
Yeah.
definitions and words, really, we have to be very, very scrutinizingly when it does not, as we say, deal with the whole person in the individual mindset of that person's conviction and why they are thinking, believing, and manifesting what they can, and we all can say is similar to us because we all can fall into those same categories at times. But is it for the same reason? Is a person depressed because for the same reason? So we're giving everybody who's depressed, Butrin or whatever the heck it is. Well, I have a client who's depressed and another one who's depressed, and this one is depressed because their dog died. This one is depressed because he just don't like himself. But they all are on the same medication for three totally different reasons why they are manifesting a symptom. So that's dysfunctional to me. That's why I like functional medicine. Each individual has to be assessed autonomously to find out what is in that individual belief system that is allowing them to have these manifestations. And is there any unseen medical issues that may even have a part to play in that? So in my world, that's functional medicine. Conventional medicine will say name it, blame it, and tame it with medication. That's what we have as a construct in our society, and it's proliferated all over the world now. So the pharmaceutical company is having a wonderful time with all of our diseases, which is not diseases, right? Because diseases you find in a cadaver when you open up a dead person. But what we're dealing with is what we are naming people. It's not discovered, it's created. The book used to be that big, DSM-4, DSM-3, now DSM-5 is like bigger than the Bible. So, and I remember a while back when homosexuality used to be called a disease and it was in a definition in the DSM-4 and the world started hollering, they went back and changed that. You won't find that in there anymore. So what is that saying? I rest my case.
All
Something to
right.
think about.
Oh, there it is. That's something to think
I
about.
got to jump up and let you close it. I hope we met you halfway with something. It's not all the time when we come halfway, we're going to see the same thing. But at least
That's right.
we're saying a whole lot. So a lot of folks can probably grasp from all these different perspectives. It's very autonomous in how we think, but
That's
it's
right.
culturally dysfunctional when we come together to try to come and make it into a seamless collaboration. So, but like us, we're in a good space to bring it to where we end. You know what I mean?
That's
And
right.
meet you halfway on that level. So hopefully they will too.
All right, sir. We'll talk soon.
Nice seeing you again, Glenn. Nice
Yeah,
talking to
man.
you.
Definitely hit me up anytime you're around, bro. Appreciate talking with you too.
All right, Tom.
Let me know when your next show is, because I never saw you perform.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been doing more theater and improv, but I'll keep you in the loop.
Definitely. And go out and find my book, man, because you're going to find it to be very interesting. I could not say enough on it today, but there's another volume coming out as well, there's a 2-volume. So this is mentally emancipated, the insanity of humanity, and mentally incarcerated, the insanity of humanity. That's the first book. And the second one is mentally emancipated. Free yourself from yourself. Problem, solution. So hopefully you'll get it, and everybody out there, go get it. It's going to speak volume to a lot of the things we were saying here and more that I couldn't express because it wasn't my show to say so. So still, thank you for letting me plug it in too. And it's going well. So, Mo, you got your book yet? You better tell me you got your book already, man.
I got your book before it was before you released it to the world.
Huh?
I showed you I had it. I had it before you even released it to the public. What you talking about? All right, we'll leave it at that. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Peace. Y'all be all right.
Peace.